So our speaker, Kate McKenzie, she is our newest senior librarian. So we are very excited to have her. She has a bachelor's in science from, bachelor's in science in library informatics from Northern Kentucky University. It's a little bit of a mouthful. In 2020, she received a certificate in genealogical research from Boston University, and she received her Master of Library and Information Science from Kent State University in 2020. So her research interests include Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, as well as research in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. So she has a lot of really great knowledge to share with all of you today.
So thank you again for joining us today. If you have ancestors from the Mountain State, we'll be talking about some tools and tips for beginning your genealogy research in West Virginia. So a little summary of what we'll be talking about today includes vital records, naturalizations, newspaper, probate records, cemetery records, maps, resources at the state and local level, and then resources that we have here at the Genealogy Center as well. So just a little bit of state history before we dive in. This map of the state from 1900 is courtesy of the West Virginia Department of Arts, Culture, and History, and it comes from their digital collection. So we'll talk about them more later. And in the 1600s, European colonists began to move into the Ohio Valley area of what was the western part of Virginia. And Native American tribes such as the Delaware and Shawnee were living in this area. And as a result of European settlement, Native Americans were forced westward. A more concentrated settlement in the area of present-day West Virginia began in the later half of the 1700s, with pioneers moving in from other eastern states. So that included Pennsylvania, New York, and Maryland. And at the start of the American Revolution, there were about 30,000 settlers in Western Virginia. Germans and the Irish began immigrating to Western Virginia in the early 1800s, and West Virginia was admitted to the Union as the 35th state during the Civil War, when it broke away from Virginia in 1863. So at this time, the population hovered around 380,000. And after the Civil War, coal mining and other industries brought people from many different nationalities to work in West Virginia. More African Americans came to the state to work in the coal mines. And there were also many immigrants who came from Eastern Europe, especially Poles, Hungarians, Austrians, Russians, and Czechs. Also, large numbers of Italians and Greeks settled in the state as well. The state has 55 counties, and the capital is Charleston, although it did shift between Charleston and Wheeling until Charleston was selected by popular vote in 1877. So we'll start with vital records. And in the early years from the 1850s through about 1880, a very low percentage of births were actually recorded. So these rates began to increase substantially in the late 1800s and up through the 1920s. Statewide registration for births began in 1917, and they began to see compliance around 1921. So then for marriage records, 1853 marks general compliance as far as recording marriages. And for records before West Virginia's 1863 statehood, these records would have been recorded by the existing counties in Virginia. And then as far as death records go, like births, some of the earliest records are considered to range from about 1853 to 1900, and 1917 marks when registration began to be required by the state. However, the state did not reach general compliance until about 1925 for deaths. And then I also wanted to mention that West Virginia is a closed records state, which basically means that they do not consider vital records to be public. So these become open only after a period of time elapses. And in West Virginia, it's 100 years for birth and then 50 years for death, marriage, and divorce. I also wanted to include a mention of divorce records here as well. And after 1851, the divorce proceedings, those were held by the clerk of the circuit court in the county where the divorce was obtained. So that's where you'll find those records. And when searching for vital records and other types of records in West Virginia, it is important to know a little bit of history about how the county was formed, where you believe your ancestor lived, because county records remained with the county that created them. So vital records may be on file under the former county rather than in the current courthouse. So for example, Hancock County was formed in 1848 from Brooke. So records for residents in the present day area of Hancock County prior to 1848, you would probably find those records in Brooke County. So depending on the time period, if you're searching for your ancestors before statehood, you'll also want to cover your bases in Virginia as well and search within their records and newspapers. So continuing with vital records, this is the homepage for the West Virginia Department of Arts, Culture, and History. And you can access that at wvculture.org. So this is my favorite website for West Virginia genealogy and history research. And it's kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of valuable research tools and databases, but especially for vital records. So first I wanted to mention the research button. You'll see that there in the top middle part of the website. And at that link, you can access their guides to collections and other materials. So that'll include things like county court records, naturalizations, vertical files, and a number of other collections. So we'll talk about that a little more as well. And then circling back to the vital records, to access these, you'll click on the link at the top where the arrow is pointing. And then you'll be taken to a page that looks like this. So from there, you have the option to search births, marriages, or deaths. And so we'll start with births. And the search tool here allows you to enter the first name, the last name, the county that they were born in, and the year, and so on. So on the right-hand column there is a listing of counties and date ranges of birth records available for each county. So most of these records will fall in the time frame from the 1850s through the late 1800s and then up to about 1921. There are some outliers mixed in there. For example, Cabell County has some birth records as early as 1811. So if you know the county where your ancestor was born, it's helpful to check that and see which date ranges are available. Another note to make is that numerous state copies of vital records from about 1917 to 1921 were destroyed in a fire. So if you're not finding a record for an ancestor during this time, you might want to check with the county clerk and try to obtain the records that way. So on this page, I searched for a relative, a second great uncle. So I entered his first name and last name, John Marsh, and I entered the year of birth. I put it as 1900 and put that as exact. But if you're not sure, you can do plus or minus a couple of years. And so I came up with two results, and my ancestor is, or my relative's the one that's second on the list there. So from there, you can click on the name to view the indexed information, or under that image size heading at the right, you can click on that file and then view the full record from there. Another way to search for these records is via FamilySearch. So if you prefer that, they have the 1853 to 1930 database for West Virginia births. So I just did the same search here for the birth record for John Marsh. And when I click view record, it'll send me directly to the record on WV Culture. So I can bypass the search page there. And going back to the WV Culture website, searching for deaths and marriages is nearly the same as searching for births. Something that you might find when searching is that you might receive two records for the same person, which is what I found here when searching a family name. So there on the right, you can see the image size, and the death record with the smaller file size is usually the one that's handwritten, and the one with the bigger file size is the one that's been typed up, but that's typically the only difference. And this is just an example of a standard death record that you might find. It's one that I located for an ancestor through WV Culture. So now we'll go ahead and talk about cemetery records here. The first place to start is often Find a Grave and Billion Graves. Those websites are great places to check for record of your ancestor's burial location and information about the cemetery. And if possible, you can also contact the cemetery association that runs the cemetery to see about the scope of records that they might hold. So another option would be to search within the FamilySearch Catalog under a county or a specific city or town to identify possible collections of cemetery records that are online there. And lastly, the West Virginia State Archives, they do have a cemetery card index, and that covers various cemeteries throughout the state. So information for that index was compiled during the 1930s as part of a WPA project. And it's not available online, so you'll need to contact the archives or visit in order to obtain that information or search for a cemetery that way. So with the vital records, since West Virginia did not reach general compliance until the 1920s, it might be challenging to locate some of those earlier records for births and deaths. So you'll want to look for some alternate records. And of course, records like US censuses, those will be important to look at. Taken every 10 years starting in 1790, those will provide you with the approximate ages of people in the household, where they were living, their occupations, and additional details. Newspaper tidbits like birth announcements or obituaries can also be a big help in tracking down that birth and death information. And we'll talk more about some of those records in a bit. And one of the alternate record types that I wanted to mention first are church records. So these can include baptisms, marriages, and deaths. And sometimes they can provide information that vital records may not. So I always like to check FamilySearch first, because sometimes you might get lucky and church records could be online for the area that you're researching. So to do this, I, instead of clicking the search button to search all categories, I clicked to search the catalog there at the top. And I searched under West Virginia, Ohio County, and received a couple of results. So included are records there for St. Joseph's Cathedral and St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. So if I knew my ancestor was a member of one of those parishes, that would be a great record set to explore further. If you're not finding the church records on FamilySearch and you know that your ancestor was Catholic, the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston is the next best place to go to request sacramental records. That could include the baptisms if you're trying to include a birth, or marriage records. Also, if your ancestor was buried in a Catholic cemetery, they can usually provide records related to the burial as well. And this diocese covers the entire state of West Virginia, and their website here is dwc.org. So you could click the diocese link at the top, and then there'll be a drop-down menu under offices, and Diocesan Archives is the first choice, or the third choice, I mean. So there's an online archives research request form that you can fill out to obtain those sacramental records for your ancestors. So if your ancestor was Protestant or of another faith tradition, if possible, you could try to contact the church itself first. And I've also listed a few organizations here, including the Episcopal Diocese of West Virginia, who you can contact for Episcopal records, or the Tri-Synod Archives, which are available through Teal College in Greenville, Pennsylvania. And they hold many of the records there for Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia Lutheran congregations. Another organization would be the West Virginia Baptist Historical Society, and they maintain archival collections that include historical information on individual churches, churches within the West Virginia Baptist Convention. They have information on pastors, files on Baptist lay people and the work that they've done, and additional holdings. So also at the top left there is a clipping from WVU's Regional History Center and their microfilm catalog. And they do have a few church records on microfilm, especially for Baptist churches. So that may be another resource to look into. So as a way to try to identify possible church records and just to learn more about the history of your ancestors' church, another interesting resource to check out might be the church record surveys, which are available on FamilySearch. And these were conducted in the 1930s, and they were a project of the Works Progress Administration. So the goal with this project was to prepare inventories and lists of records that were held by various churches. So this is an example here of one of the entries in FamilySearch. This is for the survey of Baptist churches in West Virginia. And at the bottom of the page under format, where you see that camera icon, you can click on that to view the images. So unfortunately, these are not indexed, so you're not able to keyword search them, but they're organized alphabetically by county. And again, this one's for Baptist churches, but there are other church surveys that include West Virginia Episcopal churches, Presbyterian, Methodist, and Methodist Episcopal. So all of these links are included in the handout as well. And so this is a page that I swiped from the West Virginia Baptist Church Survey. And this page is in reference to the First Baptist Church in Martinsburg. And it gives a little bit of history about the church. And then towards the bottom there, it talks about the records that they have. So it notes that they have minute books, register books, which contain lists of baptisms, and they have marriages and deaths, as well as a roll of Sunday school records. So additionally, probate records can help prove family relationships when birth and death records may not be available or may not provide much detail. So probate records are court records that are created after someone's death, and they concern the allocation of the estate. So if someone left a valid will when they died, it's known as testate, and then if a person died with no will, it's known as intestate. And these records are valuable because they can provide the person's date of death, the name of their spouse and children, and other significant individuals that were connected to the family at the time. They also provide clues about the status of family relationships, and they'll even talk about household items. So these are a few places where you might begin to look for probate records. And I'd start with the online records available through Ancestry and FamilySearch first. There's a database that spans from 1724 to 1928 on Ancestry for West Virginia wills and probate records. And then there's one that spans from 1756 to 1971 on FamilySearch for will books. And then for more recent records or those that you're not able to find through the databases, you can also contact the county clerk's office to inquire about those probate records. And then lastly, the West Virginia State Archives, they do have an online list of county court records on microfilm. So this is an image of the catalog for court records at WV Culture for the State Archives. So it might be a little bit hard to see here, but there's the listing of counties, and you can click to select the county that you're researching to view their holdings. And so I selected Barber County, and you can see the listing of court records that they have. And that collection does include wills from 1843 to 1969. And then along with the county court records, I wanted to mention a couple of other things on WV Culture that might be helpful to your research. So this page provides online resources by county. And this resource is a little bit hidden on their website because they have it listed under their teacher resources and education section. So there is a clickable map here, so you can click on the county or browse through the county names at the right. And I don't think these pages have been updated in a little while, but they're still helpful. So for this example, I clicked on Ohio County, and the page provides a snapshot of the county and then a listing of online primary sources. So scrolling down, you can see there's a listing of Civil War related sources for the county, and then you can't see it on this image, but further down the page, there's also a listing of websites where you can view various photographs, links to biographical information, and then other secondary sources for the county. So one of the items listed is Wheeling Hospital. So I'm going to click on that as an example, and then a picture pops up, and then there are a few links there at the bottom where you can click to view additional information. So when I click on one of those, this is an excerpt that describes the history of the hospital. So something like this might be of interest to you if you had an ancestor who worked at the hospital, or just to learn more about the organizations and various landmarks in the community where your ancestor lived. So these online resources by county can provide some valuable historical context to help supplement your research and write your family story. I would also recommend exploring their finding aids and databases page. So this is what it looks like. And there they have guides to collections. There are information on maps, naturalizations, and manuscripts. And then towards the bottom, there's also a section related to high school and college yearbooks. And you can view the list of yearbooks that they have, which is organized alphabetically by the name of the school. So there are a lot of great resources to explore there. And then moving over to maps, first I wanted to mention that WV Culture they've started to digitize their map collection. So this is what the listing looks like, and it's a very long listing of maps. And unfortunately, right now, there's not an easy way to browse or search what they have for a certain area or time period within the state. But you can do a Control F to search the web page and find the area that you're looking for. So for this example, I entered Mingo, searching for results related to Mingo County, and I got 67 hits with that word. So The one there in the middle highlighted in yellow, the title for that one is Logan and Mingo Counties Showing Topography. So that one sounds interesting, so I might click on that. But I know I can view a digital image of this map because the call number is highlighted in blue. So that link will take me directly to the image. And some of the call numbers you'll see are not highlighted, and those maps have not been digitized yet. So I clicked on my map and it'll take you to another site to view them. So from there you can zoom in and out. You can download and save the map, or you can share it to social media. And you can also view the other digitized maps by searching or scrolling through the slideshow there at the top. So these can be helpful for your genealogy research and provide some context for the area where your ancestors were living at various points in the state's history. And then from this same site, you can also search for photographs. So that can be done again by typing keywords in the search bar at the top right. So I typed in Wheeling to see what might pop up, and there are 5 pages of results. So I clicked on an image, and the description for this one states that it's North Market near the Stone and Thomas building and was taken in 1901. So similar to the maps, I can click on the image to zoom in and out. I can download it and save it or share it to social media. And then going back to maps, Sanborn fire insurance maps can be another valuable resource for your genealogy research. These maps are detailed depictions of US cities and towns, and they were created mostly in the 19th and 20th centuries. And at the time, the purpose was to assist insurance companies in determining the fire hazards that were associated with various properties. So many of these are available for free on the Library of Congress's website. And this is the one for Charleston, West Virginia, dated 1907. And there are usually several dates available per town. So you can take a look at the various dates and compare properties and see how the property has changed. Maybe it's been added on to, or the address or street name has changed, for example. So these are a great tool for doing property research and to reflect what the town looked like during the time that your ancestors lived there. So usually you want to have an address of a property in mind. Maybe it's an address that you found through a census record or a draft card or something that was mentioned in a newspaper clipping. It could also be the address of a business that your ancestors owned. So with that in mind, with the address in mind, the next step would be to look at the index. And the index pages for Sanborn maps are usually at the very beginning or at the very end of the collection of images. So in this case, it's at the beginning under image 1. So we'll click on that. And then this is the full image of the index page for Charleston's 1907 Sanborn map. So the blurb of text at the top talks about Charleston's water system, since these were fire maps. And then at the left are the colorful sections. So you can see how the city has been sectioned off, and the numbers in each section correspond to the page where you'll find those streets. And then there at the very bottom is a key, and you can take a look at the symbols there, and the symbols will tell you more about the property. If it had iron shutters, if it was 1 story or 2, if it was constructed of brick or wood, and so on. So this key is not very detailed, but you can Google to find more complete keys to understand more about the characteristics of the property that you're looking at. And then if we look at the right, that'll be the alphabetical index of street names. So we'll zoom in there, and here in the middle is the W section. So all of the streets that begin with W for Charleston at this time. So if I was looking for 1002 Washington, this tells me that that address should be on page 16. So I'll go to page 16, and then there's Washington at the very bottom. And zooming in, there's the property, 1002 Washington. So this is how the property and the street looked in 1907. And then again, you can use that key to further identify characteristics of the property. So if the address number had changed, there would be two numbers in front of the house signifying the old number and the new one, which there is for this property. So the 1002 number is closest to the house because it was the current number. And then 352 is the number closer to the street, and that indicates that it was the former number. So property research can be a great supplement to your genealogy research, and these maps can provide more insight into the property where your ancestors lived, or if they owned a business, you can research those properties and gain more insight into those as well. So moving over to newspapers, these can also play an important part in your genealogy research. Searching within the larger databases is a great place to start. Through Newspaper Archive and newspapers.com, for example, which are available on site here at the Genealogy Center. You'll also want to check out Chronicling America, which is free and has many West Virginia newspapers digitized. So along with these, it's important to explore resources within other databases and those at the local level. So Ancestry does have a collection of West Virginia newspapers, and a number of them are related to Beckley, Charleston, and Morgantown. So that may be something to look at, especially if you are researching in that area. Also checking with the local library or historical society in the area where you're researching is very beneficial. So for example, the Ohio County Public Library in Wheeling, they're working on digitizing their microfilm collection. So they have a really great newspaper database available, and that begins in the 1850s and goes through the present day. And their website provides additional information about availability for dates and certain publications that they've digitized so far. Many local libraries and other historical centers will also have photograph or yearbook collections and other local records available as well. So the History Center at WVU is a great place to check out. They have collections of archives and manuscripts and various digital collections. And their digital collections do include newspapers. If you've checked out the newspaper databases and the local library, and you're still striking out with finding a newspaper for a certain location or certain time period, the WVU History Center will be a great place to look next, both within their newspaper database and that they have available and within their microfilm collection, because they have the largest collection of historical West Virginia newspapers. So moving to immigration, we'll talk about immigration, naturalization, and citizenship. So like with other records, Ancestry and FamilySearch are the best places to begin your search for records like passenger lists before branching out to other databases. So the largest port of entry for people who eventually settled in West Virginia was Ellis Island. And you may also find that your ancestors came through Philadelphia, and that was another important port of entry for people headed to West Virginia. So these passenger lists are important because they'll often tell you who your ancestor was traveling with, where they were headed. Sometimes that would include a specific name or address, and often it'll tell you where they came from. And sometimes Sometimes you'll get a specific town and other times it'll just include the name of the country. So you can search the passenger records on databases like Ancestry Library Edition and FamilySearch. And you can also use the Ellis Island website and search through their passenger search feature, which is pictured here. They also have a ship search feature. So if you know the ship that your ancestor came on, you can search that way too. And another option is to use Steve Morse's website, and that's pictured here at the right. And this website offers one-step searches. So these are designed to be a little bit more versatile than what other search algorithms sometimes offer. So if you're not having luck with other databases, then this site can be a helpful tool to find those records. Moving to naturalization, this is a screenshot from the Ancestry Catalog, and I filtered by location, selected immigration, and then clicked on citizenship records. So I wanted to mention the collection closest to the top, the West Virginia Federal Naturalization Records from 1844 to 1943. And that collection was added to Ancestry just last year, and then it was recently updated a couple months ago. And then the collection below it with naturalizations from 1814 to 1991 is also one that I wanted to mention. And similar to Ancestry, the FamilySearch Catalog also contains some valuable collections related to naturalization. And that includes declarations of intention and petitions granted. So we mentioned a little bit about using the FamilySearch Catalog to identify church records and naturalizations, and I just wanted to mention again how helpful it can be to search the catalog to identify and to access records that may not be indexed yet and are not searchable by keyword. So sometimes these records can take a little bit more time to look through to find your ancestor and find what you're looking for, but there are some really valuable hidden finds in there. So as an example, this is the listing of materials that you can find for Cabell County within the FamilySearch Catalog. There's cemetery records, divorces, land deeds, wills, probate records, and more. I also wanted to mention local histories. It's important to remember that these are secondary sources, so they were compiled and written long after the events actually occurred. So it is good to find the original records if they are available to verify the information that you find within them. However, local histories can provide really valuable biographical information. So it's definitely worth exploring those books. And if your ancestors were maybe more prominent in the area, there might be information about their settlement there, the church they attended, their occupation, and other details about the family. And if you don't find information within these books specific to your ancestors, they can offer clues as to where you might look next. They'll talk about the community, information about its founding, various churches, businesses, and schools in the area. And so this can that can spark some ideas for other places where you might search for records next. And then again, after the Civil War, many people of various nationalities moved to West Virginia to work in coal mining and other industries. So the state is very ethnically diverse. So these local histories and church histories as well are important resources for information on ethnic groups that settled in particular areas. And here on this slide is a screenshot from a website which has links for digitized family histories for various counties in West Virginia. So this might be a good place to start, and then you can always search for physical books that may not be digitized for smaller communities and towns, or books that are still in copyright and cannot be made available electronically yet. So we'll talk about how you can search for those materials in our catalog in a bit. But on this website, you can click on the links next to each county and it'll take you directly to the location where you can view the book. So it might be available on FamilySearch, Google Books, or through the Internet Archive. And there are a number of books in this list that have been digitized from our collections here at the Genealogy Center. So this is just a quick, easy way to find them. And next, I wanted to explore the resources that we have here at the Genealogy Center that might be helpful for starting to research your ancestors in West Virginia. So this is our homepage, and it's accessible at genealogycenter.org. And the first item that I wanted to point out is the Pathfinders link at the top. So we'll click on that. And then we have Pathfinders for certain states. So for states, and then for certain subjects such as DNA and military research. And there are also international Pathfinders if you're researching your ancestors in various countries. So this is a view of the Pathfinder for West Virginia. And it highlights a list of books that we have in our collection that might be helpful as you begin your research. So the materials are divided into different categories, such as research guides, biographical items, military records, and more. So I just wanted to mention a couple of items in particular. We do have a book of Baltimore and Ohio Railroad employees, which contains some great biographical information. There's also a book that we have titled Fatalities in West Virginia Coal Mines, which spans from 1883 to 1925. And that information in that book was extracted from the reports of mine inspectors. So it contains information related to the miner, their date of death, manner of injury, if they had a widow and children that survived them, whether or not they had insurance, and what nationality they were. So that can be a helpful source, especially because deaths were not consistently recorded during that time. So that can be a helpful book. Also, if you think your ancestor might have died in one of West Virginia's coal mines, another book that we have is by Lacey A. Dillon, and it's titled They Died in the Darkness, and it was published in 1976. And that one describes over 40 coal mining disasters, and it provides the list of victims for each one. And it covers accidents from 1886 to 1968. So it spans a little bit larger length of time. We also have indexes to early West Virginia wills and estate settlements. And there are many resources related to West Virginians who served in military conflicts, such as the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and others. So the Pathfinder is a great starting point when you navigate to our website to see some of these highlights of our West Virginia collection before heading to the catalog to search for more specific county-related items. So when you search the catalog, you'll type in your keywords in the search bar at the top, and then you'll click that purple find button. And we recommend filtering your search by branch at the left and clicking on genealogy, and that way it'll allow you to easily peruse our holdings. And at the Genealogy Center, we have a comprehensive collection which contains thousands of volumes containing the histories and records of towns and counties across the US. So we have many county and town histories, cemetery, church, court, land and probate records. So these books for West Virginia are all searchable in the catalog. So we invite you to search and to take a look at the collection and see which materials might be helpful to you as you begin your West Virginia genealogy research. And then the periodical source index is another helpful tool for genealogy research in West Virginia and beyond. So this is accessible from anywhere, and it's listed within our selection of free databases. And here you can search using a particular surname, location, or you can keyword search by article title. So for this example, I'm going to do the location search, and I entered West Virginia, and then I picked Marion County. And so here I met with a total number of articles that correspond to various clickable categories. So I could explore entries related to church records, land records, cemeteries, institutions, or a number of other subjects. And these are the entries that pop up related to obituaries in Marion County. And depending on the number of results that you receive, you can also use the small search box where the red arrow is pointing. And that way you can enter keywords and help further narrow down your search. An additional resource to utilize within our free databases is our Microtext catalog. And that's a searchable listing of microfilm and microfiche located in the Genealogy Center. And you can search the Microtext catalog by location under specialty records, ethnic records, and other items such as newspapers. So I'm going to search by location and click on counties. And then from there, I'll have the option to select a state and then type in the county name. So I used my example of Ohio County. And so microfilm holdings include various Catholic church records, information regarding early landowners, various county records. There are wills and vital records as well. So those are some of the highlights of materials and resources that we have here at the Genealogy Center that can assist you with your West Virginia research. So we invite you to check out our website and explore the resources and stop in the department to research in person.
Well, thank you again, Kate, for such an awesome program. And thanks all of you for joining us this afternoon. And I hope all of you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.